The topic we have chosen is disability at work. What exactly is disability? Disability is a physical or mental condition that restricts a person's movement, senses, and activities.
Every human being is unique. Although that individual may have the same impairment as others, they will certainly experience different opportunity and barriers in which in accordance to where they live and their surrounding treatment to the impairs. The social model of disability assists us to understand deeper the person in disability. Set of rule and regulation was placed to inform, plan, and educate people regarding the disability context in the first New Zealand disability strategy in 2001. In June 2017 quarter, the labor market rates by disability show that the participation of disabled people in the workplace is as much as 25.2%, which is far lesser than the participation rate in 2001, in an estimate 44% labor force participation rate, and out of 25.2%, there is 22.4% in employment and 11.4% unemployed. And on the same date, average weekly income by disability status show that the average weekly income for the disabled was $458, compared with $833 for non-disabled, nearly twice the amount due to the fact that disabled people were employed for fewer hours per week on average than non-disabled people.
Disability and the labor market, the ideology behind it. Ideally, people with disabilities should have the same or similar chances and opportunities to employment as their able-bodied counterparts. Their abilities, strengths, differences, and knowledge should be the basis on which their employability and employment opportunities are based upon. However, it has been known that people with disabilities do not fare as well in the employment market as their able-bodied peers. Disabled people are more likely to be unemployed or employed in poorer paid or low-status jobs than their able-bodied counterparts. For most of the 20th century, disability was thought to be a problem inherent in individuals. People with disabilities were seen as weaker, less valuable members of the society. In fact, it wasn't until the Disabled Promotions Act 1960, which allowed sheltered employment opportunities for disabled people, that people with disabilities were finally allowed to be part of the labor force. But it was 1970s onwards when the government's approach to services available to disabled became more rights and community-based that the real changes towards involvement of the disabled people in the labor market occurred. With a growing recognition of the potential that disabled people could bring in the labor force and the need to empower disabled people for their own betterment, Aotearoa New Zealand took a radical approach to diversity in relation to employment of persons with disability. With families and social activists advocating for the rights of the disabled and the recognition of the potential of disabled people in the labor force, supporting agencies, policies and legislations were brought into effect to encourage and support disabled people in seeking and maintaining employment. While the participation of disabled people in the labor market began as a necessity to fill gaps in the market, in recent years there has been support for mainstream employment based on the skills, knowledge and differences and the strengths that disabled people may bring to the table. Disability employment policies have now shifted from being a labor market concern to ensuring opportunities and participation of disabled people. Policies have been put into place to ensure that disabled people have an equal opportunity to employment and are not discriminated against based on their disability. Current statistics show that there is still a high level of unemployment and participation rate when it comes to disabled people in the labor force. The question is, why?
What this means in terms of capitalism is that employers, in particular privately owned companies, are the ones with the power. They decide who they want to employ and how fairly they want to pay them. When an employer holds negative attitudes towards disabilities, members of this group are instantly faced with extra hurdles in order to obtain a job that those without a disability would not. Negative attitudes toward disabilities in the workplace are perceived extra cost associated with hiring disabled people, levels of productivity, negative reactions of co-workers and consumers, and a perceived special treatment of disabled workers by co-workers. Despite the fact that New Zealand has legislation in place to prevent discrimination against disability, it appears that negative attitudes toward disability in the workplace still exist. In April 2018, only 44.1% of privately owned companies in New Zealand had policies and initiatives in place around disability in the workplace. To add to this, sadly, over 25% of all complaints to the Human Rights Commission between 2005 and 2010 were related to pre-employment and employment disability discrimination. What this means in terms of capitalism is that employers, in particular privately owned companies, are the ones with the power. They decide who they want to employ and how fairly they want to pay them. When an employer holds negative attitudes towards disabilities, members of this group are instantly faced with extra hurdles in order to obtain a job that those without a disability would not. Negative attitudes toward disabilities in the workplace are perceived extra cost associated with hiring disabled people, levels of productivity, negative reactions of co-workers and consumers, and a perceived special treatment of disabled workers by co-workers. In order for these negative attitudes and perceptions to be correctly addressed, and for those with a disability to have a fair chance at successful employment, some key enablers need to be focused on, such as educating employers and the wider workforce about disability, ensuring physical access is available for disabled workers, working with employers to ensure the best fit between employees and employer, and prior contact with disabled people also increases the likelihood that an employer will employ someone with a disability.
After considering the previously discussed factors that have caused issues for disabled people in the workforce, the question remains, what has been done to counteract such issues? The New Zealand Disability Strategy was created by the Ministry of Social Development with the vision of creating a non-disabling society in New Zealand. There is an increased focus on supporting disabled people into employment, especially in comparison with the previous 2001 strategy. An outcome hoped to be achieved is that disabled individuals have employment and economic security and are treated with dignity and respect in the workforce. The Ministry of Social Development established the Disability Confident campaign in order to promote the benefits for organisations to hire disabled workers. Under this campaign, the lead toolkit was created as a how-to guide for employing disabled people. It contains tips and guidance for managers and employers, from recruitment and retention to health and safety and legal matters. The overall message is that disabled people bring a perspective that can transform a business culture, customer relations, and performance for the better. There has been recent debate regarding the current minimum wage exemption model, where organisations are able to pay individuals less due to their disability. Unsurprisingly, many people have found this government scheme unfair and discriminatory, and it clearly does not align with the disability strategy's focus of supporting disabled people into employment and creating equal opportunities for them in society. However, the government plans to abolish the current scheme in order to counteract the unemployment rate of disabled individuals, which is 2 times higher than abled people. The unemployment rate of disabled people is seen as a serious issue. However, attitudes of employers prevent this from improving. Attitudes toward disabled workers are predominantly negative, as reflected in this study where factors such as absenteeism and higher costs are cited as reasons for not employing them. This creates negative implications for diversity in the workplace, as this diversity group becomes excluded from working due to preconceived ideas and beliefs held by employers. Employer attitudes towards disabled people
Ideologies leading to negative societal views and power relations which allow companies to choose not to employ disabled have all contributed to the barriers this group faces when entering the workforce. However, there are various government-led strategies and initiatives that are counteracting the negative issues this group faces. There is a growing recognition of the potential disabled people can bring to the workforce, and guides for employers in hiring disabled people hope to change negative views and allow employment opportunities. In order for New Zealand to achieve the vision of becoming a non-disabling society, organisations must provide disabled individuals with the same employment opportunities as their abled counterparts.